listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11, Monday through Friday.
We come back to the same issue, which is the notion that Uncle Sam, the government, is a suitable replacement for a father in the home. So it's always, well, why isn't the government doing more to support families? And again, most means-tested welfare programs do not go to married couples. So whenever someone is making the argument for more government aid to help families, they're making the argument that elected officials and unelected bureaucrats are a suitable replacement for a man in the home. That's a position that I cannot and will not take. And to his point in terms of bad government policy, I'm not making the argument that government policy has always helped the black family. What I am saying is that when racism was overt, more black children were born to married parents. And
it is the Martha Zoller Show, and that was Delano Squires, and I saw him on C-SPAN a few weeks ago and couldn't wait to get him on. And he has done some incredible work on Special Report Beyond Moynihan, the Blueprint to Revive Marriage and Rebuild the Black Family. He grew up in New York City, a bachelor's degree in computer engineering. He got a graduate degree in public policy. He's married and got 3 kids, and he did a lot of data work in the early part of his career and worked for DC, and then now he's working for the Heritage Foundation as a research fellow in the Richard and Helen DeVos Center for Human Flourishing. And I want to ask you, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
I want to ask you how you got from your data stuff to the work you're doing now.
It was a long and circuitous route to go from DC government to the Heritage Foundation, but one thing that's been consistent is that for the last 10 plus years, I've been writing about issues related to marriage and family. And so even while I was doing my government work and always in a community-facing role, I was always doing something to elevate these issues around family structure, fatherhood, marriage, and eventually I got on the radar for the Heritage Foundation, and they brought me in, and I've been able to continue that work from a perspective that is true and consistent to both my views and my values.
Well, and it's the Moynihan Report, for people that don't know, was a report that came out, I believe, in the late 60s, mid 60s, and talked a lot about not only the black family and single parent homes, but gave a warning sign to the rest of us that while these numbers were higher in black families, and they were still low compared to what they are now, but that we needed to be concerned all the way around. And I've always argued that it's economics and education that separate us, that, a poor white kid from Appalachia has a lot of the same problems that a poor black kid in an urban setting has. And we've got to talk about these issues in an important way.
Agreed. And you're right. The Moynihan Report came out in 1965. Daniel Patrick Moynihan was then Assistant Labor Secretary under President Lyndon Johnson. And he was issuing a warning that the state of the black family, which he saw as beginning to disintegrate, particularly in large urban areas, was going to slow the progress of the civil rights movement. And to your point, Martha, at that point, what he saw as a state of emergency was a 25% non-marital birth rate among African-American families. So not only has that skyrocketed to around 70% since the late 90s, but every ethnic group, aside from Asian Americans, has a non-marital birth rate higher than 25% today. So, in fact, the 40% of all American children are born to unmarried parents. So, yes, the black family was the canary in the coal mine, but this is an issue that is affecting every American family and every American community.
So what do you think is the role of how we have treated boys in this society. I'm the mother of 3 grown sons who are great. They're married, have kids, all that kind of stuff. But even when I was a young mother, I was concerned about the messages that my sons were getting from the society about men. And I tried, they had a father in their life, but I tried to make sure that, where we could, we had male teachers, where we could, we had other male role models that were strong, that could help them become great young men. And then my daughter came along, and I'm thankful she's married to a great young man. So it's important that you have that. But there's a young man down in Albany, Georgia, named King Randall the First. And I don't know if you've seen his work, The X for Boys. Yes. And we've done something to boys. I think you see it kind of heightened in what's happening with black men or black young men in certain areas, but it's happening across the board, that there were lots of problems, but I'm seeing some encouragement. How do you feel about it?
I think you hit the nail on the head. And one of the things that people associate with the Moynihan Report is the role and expansion, more specifically, of the welfare state. So people will talk about how the government displaced men as providers in the home, particularly for low-income couples. But one of the things that doesn't get talked about as much is that at the same time that the welfare state was exploding, the second wave feminist movement was coming into fruition, and that has had a tremendous impact on how the culture and society sees and talks about boys. And one of the things that I'm very clear on is that a political ideology that promotes hostility between the sexes can never lead to stronger families. And I think what you're picking up on, or have picked up on, are the ways in which people who think, in that sort of feminist mind frame, talk about boys as oppressors, masculinity itself as toxic, men as, framing patriarchy as something that is negative. So a man who says he wants to take responsibility for his home, he wants to provide for a wife and children, is seen as some sort of regressive chauvinist. And I do think it has worked itself out in public policy, in public rhetoric, and now, generally speaking, across the board, across the left-right political divide, people are starting to say, yes, our boys are struggling. They're more disconnected, they're disaffected, leaving the labor force, addicted to pornography, hooked on video games, and a big part of it is the messaging. The messaging for the last few decades, and certainly is the case today, the messaging towards young women is about empowerment and independence and education and financial freedom. And then messaging to young men is rarely about those things. It's certainly not about being a leader, taking responsibility. Oftentimes it's about being more in touch with your feelings, being more soft and sensitive, and using the quote-unquote privilege of masculinity to advocate for, quote-unquote marginalized groups. So this has had a tremendous effect on young men, which means that it also has an effect on young women, because the women who now have the education and financial independence that their grandmothers dreamed of are having a hard time finding suitable mates because the boys have fallen further and further behind.
Well, and I think taking it from my side as a woman of a certain age and going through all of that, I made the decision after I got married to stay at home for a period of time. And I did stay at home until my last child was in school. And then I worked very part-time until rebuilding my career. And I knew I had to take a step back. It was, I tried the working and raising kids. And then we had a couple of babysitters that didn't show up. And the stress of that, I just said, okay, this is not, we can't do this. And so we sold our house. We bought a smaller house. We made the sacrifices we need to make because we were early in our careers, and we did it. And I know things are different now, and my daughter-in-laws tell me that it's not possible today, and that's another discussion for another day. But what I learned from that decision is that we women fight against each other. The feminism, I consider myself a feminist because I think women should be able to do whatever they want to do. But yet other women looked at me as like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? Why would you give up all of that? And you know what? It's the best decision I ever made. And yeah, I had to start my career over again, but that's only money. That's only money. That's not your children.
I think you touched on something important, which is our society celebrates any woman who manages a large, complex organization, unless it's her home. And we love women who dedicate themselves to training the next generation of Americans, unless it's our own children. So there is this sense that feminists, particularly the second wave feminists, sold women on the idea that their movement was about giving them a range of options that they could choose from, each option being equally important and valuable. But really, in effect, what it is that they ended up devaluing the role of marriage, family, children, and particularly promoting the idea that the home itself is a prison that needs to be escaped from. And I think anyone under the age of 60, and some people over the age of 60, anyone who's grown up with that cultural narrative has to fight against it if you want to make certain decisions. So my wife and I made a similar decision after the birth of our third child, and we have 4 now, but after the birth of our third child, she decided to come home, and yes, it put more responsibility on my shoulders, but particularly with her as a social worker, we realized she was spending her entire day helping people manage their household and take care of their children, and we were paying someone what amounted to close to a mortgage payment to help them take care of our children. And at a certain point, we had to ask ourselves, does this make sense financially? So, yeah, I see the things that you're talking about on an everyday basis, and a big part of it is how the extent to which we have devalued the importance of family in the home within sort of our cultural narratives.
Yeah, we need to understand, and this is what I say to the people I mentor as well as in speeches all the time. All women are working women. So stop separating stay-at-home women from so-called working women. We're all working women. The difference is you can never get away from your job when you're at home. So it's like, when I finally went back to work, I was like, I'm enjoying this. I get to leave my responsibilities behind for a few hours. But I was home by 1:00 every day. I worked very part-time. So as far as my kids were concerned, I was one of those women. I had like this brick laptop and a bag phone early when I went back to work because my kids are in their 40s, and I took the afternoons with them like I always did, got them through all their activities, all that stuff, and then I was returning emails at 10:00 at night. I made it work. And I'm not trying to put a halo on my head, but it's like we make it work. And I knew a lot of women. I wasn't unique. A lot of women did that. Now, the big pushback against this always is the economy. What are your thoughts on where the economy is as it relates to families, and what are the next steps?
I certainly understand couples who say that it is extremely difficult to maintain a household on one income. I didn't know anyone growing up who had a stay-at-home mom. So I'm not making the argument that this is possible for every family. But I do think part of the challenge that people face with respect to the economy and family is that Americans, I believe, have just gotten used to a much higher lifestyle. So sometimes you'll hear young people talking, about the difficulty of finding single-family homes, and it certainly can be. And the price of homes has definitely gone up. I've seen it in our own area over the last decade. But sometimes they'll talk about the need for a 4-bedroom home just for a married couple with one child. So I think in previous generations, men and women got married at younger ages. So the median age of first marriage has gone up about 7.5 years for men and women since 1980. Couples who married younger were more willing to sacrifice, to scrimp and to save, to live below their means, and to work their way up. I think what you see now is that couples get married older. They tend to be further along in their careers, but still at times not so far that they can afford a home that costs $750,000, or depending where you are, sometimes over $1 million. So it does put a financial strain on the home when you have to have two people working at high-end jobs in order to afford a mortgage. So that may mean some couples may have to make different decisions. They may have to move a little bit further outside of the city limits. They may have to move closer to family, right, to be able to have built-in daycare. But I think the notion that it's the economy that's keeping people from marrying and having children, particularly having children within the context of marriage, doesn't necessarily square with the data. I think a much bigger issue is that marriage and family are no longer valued in the ways that they used to be. And that has a lot to do with the cultural messaging that we've been receiving over the last 60 years.
Delano Squires, it was so great to talk. I could talk to you all day. These are important issues. His work is available at heritage.org, but you can also see him, all over the place. He is at Blaze Media. He's a contributor there, but you see him pop up everywhere. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
It's always good to talk to Casey Crosbie, that is the co-chair of the RNC. I was talking a little earlier on my way in to Josh McCoon, who is our chairman, and he said that he had a conversation with you. And, Casey, we're in this, third week, going into the third week of the government shutdown. And again, the Democrats keep revealing themselves that Schumer said every day it gets better for us. Okay. The other folks are talking about, this is really about the elections that are coming up. This is not the way people should be negotiating. The way you negotiate is you come to the table and you negotiate. We've got enough votes to open the government up. We've got to get through cloture. So we've got a lot of work to do. I'm seeing a shift with even left-wing media like CNN questioning why they're doing things the way they're doing. Jon Stewart gave Bernie Sanders a hard time this week. The ladies of The View gave Bernie Sanders a hard time this week. I see some things moving. What do you see?
Yeah, I think people are seeing how unconscionable it is that the Democrats are using our military, our veterans, women and children, air traffic controllers. They're using them as bargaining chips in this little game that they're playing right now to get $1.5 trillion for 7 weeks to pass a clean CR. That's what they're asking for. They're putting illegal aliens before American citizens, and it's unconscionable, and people are seeing it for what it is. They're sort of eating their words, because under Biden, they voted for this numerous times. They voted for clean CRs, and now all of a sudden they can't vote for it. They own this, and this is their fault.
Now, Casey, you're from Kentucky originally, is that right?
I am, yes.
So, Kentucky's a very red state. Okay, but they also have a Democratic governor. It's kind of a weak governor's position, but you're in the real world. I live in the real world, too. I think that these folks got to go out and, walk in the grass and get in the sunshine and see what real people are talking about, because the people that they are traipsing out there are not real people.
Yeah, clearly they are bowing down to leaders like AOC, Mamdani, Bernie Sanders. And when you go out, I travel all over the country, and you're right, I'm from Kentucky. It's a very conservative state. People in middle America in the South, we don't agree with their far left woke agenda. And I agree with you. Sometimes getting out in the sunshine and feeling the grass on your feet is good for the soul, and gives you a little different perspective when you go out and talk to people across the country.
So I'm broadcasting from Athens, Georgia today. I'm getting ready to go to a meeting at the University of Georgia. I'm a double dog, and what's funny, and I always make a joke that I get younger and better looking the closer I get to Athens. But in Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky is like Athens. It's a blue dot in a big red sea, and so I get it that there are Democratic enclaves, even in conservative states. But I think that when you talk about the message, this message is not, and you tell me if I'm wrong or not, Casey, I don't look at this message as so much a conservative message, although it is. It is a common sense message. The message that President Trump is bringing to us right now, and the things he's trying to get done, whether it's peace in the Middle East or getting prices down or helping with tariffs and adjusting tariffs as it relates to products that we actually use. It's a common sense agenda. And that's why we're seeing and continuing to see groups of people that have typically voted Democratic, they're taking a second look at the Republican Party.
Yeah, 100%. We saw President Trump during the campaign win all 7 swing states, the popular vote, the electoral vote, and it was based on his message. And he's doing exactly what he told the American people he would do now during his presidency. And, right now our number one goal is to make sure that President Trump and his agenda, that he's a 4-year president, and we do that by growing the party and protecting the vote. So that's our number one goal at the RNC. But the demographics he expanded on: women, youth, Hispanics, blacks. I mean, we have to continue to grow those segments. And, President Trump is delivering on his campaign promises. And so that's really good for us as we're trying to grow the party, because our leader is doing exactly what he said he was going to do.
I've been telling my listeners several things. We've got some some elections here. We've got 2 Public Service Commission elections that are in this November because of some lawsuits and things like that, which is unusual for us in this off-year election. There's also some elections in New Jersey and Virginia that are typically off-year elections in this particular cycle. But I'm also telling them, as far as the shutdown, that we need to take a look at those states that President Trump won and make sure they're calling. Not only should we be calling our Georgia senators and telling them to vote to open the government back up, but you ought to be, I still call it a Rolodex, KC. You got to pull out your Rolodex, and then you've got to look for the people that are in the states. There are Democrat senators up for re-election next year that Trump won, and that's Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, also Arizona, even though that was a little bit more of an independent with Kristen Sinema, who we need to push there. But I always say to my folks, don't you call, because if I call from Georgia to Nevada, they're just going to throw it in the circular file, okay? But if I can get a friend of mine that lives in Nevada to call that senator's office and say, you need to vote yes to open this government up, we can make an impact. And I'm told their lines are burning up, KC.
Yeah, and they should. And I think you've summed it up beautifully, that, the grassroots and people have a voice, and they should use that voice. There's nothing more effective than them hearing from the people who elected them in their states. And so I would totally agree with that. And even if you look at Senator Fetterman, I mean, he says this isn't about bargaining chips. It's about doing the right thing for the American people. And so you have to give them that message of where you stand on this issue. And so I think that encouraging people in all those states to make phone calls to their elected officials is crucial.
Well, and Senator Fetterman, he still votes 93% or whatever with Democrats. But on really big issues, like he from day one fought hard to keep the hostages in the viewpoint, in the viewfinder of people, and made sure that he voted to help Israel. And also on this issue of keeping the government open, he voted yes on that. And he actually went over and met with President Trump. And he understands he lives in a swing state. And he said, if somebody's got a good idea, I'm going to work with them. I never thought in a million years, Casey, I'd be saying this many good things about John Fetterman, but I think he's shown himself to have grown into this job.
Well, it's just shameful more Democrats can't take his lead on this shutdown and see that it is bad for the American people, and to use American citizens as bargaining chips, particularly as it relates to our military, our veterans, women, children, is bad business. And I hope that they pay a dear price come midterm time for holding our government hostage.
So as you travel around the country, just to kind of close out, what are you hearing the most from people as you talk to the folks when you travel?
Well, first and foremost, people love President Trump. They are so happy with the America First agenda and the work that he's been doing and the pace that he has been doing it at. So people are extremely happy with the performance of our president and his administration. I hear a lot about the peace deals that he has made. I hear a lot about the border, 0 illegal crossings in 4 months, and, of course, the economy. And I think we kicked off talking about Thanksgiving. People are excited that gas prices are low and they can go and travel and see loved ones and spend time together. And so that's what I hear as I travel the country, and people are really getting geared up and excited to make sure President Trump is a 4-year president by winning these midterms. It's important in some of these states, like you mentioned, New Jersey, Virginia, as well as Georgia, where you have some smaller races going on, that people get out and vote. We can't forget to vote in these off-year elections, and so I would encourage people in Georgia to go out and vote in those PSC races, vote early, knock it out, and just make sure that you're getting out to vote.
Yeah, I tell you what, we're pushing that every day. We've got a lot of, well, there are municipal elections, of course, but we've got a SPLOST vote, which is a sales tax vote, and we've also got the 2 PSC positions, which are unusual that we vote for them in an off year like this, but they're important positions. And I got to tell you, Casey, what I'm hearing about that I need to learn more about is the data centers that are going up all over the country. I know that's part of a strategy to help us be more competitive with China and for us to take the lead. That's really what I'm seeing from not only the America First, but the Trump foreign policy, is that we want to get back to where we are first in the world, as well as treating ourselves first in our policy. But I need to learn more about data centers. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it certainly is a priority of the America First agenda. And, it's funny you should mention it, because I had a state rep from Kentucky contact me the other day, and we're connecting her because it's the same thing. They're on a learning curve because they're the ones who are going to be, approving for these data centers to be able to be located in Kentucky. And she was trying to gather more information on it herself. And certainly it is becoming a very hot topic across the country.
Well, and so many times we don't do I'm for low regulation, and I know that you are too, but there are certain areas where you need certain guardrails. And what happens a lot of times with new technology is the technology gets out ahead of the guardrails. Yeah. And so we end up playing catch up. I think that on a lot of the internet stuff that's out there today, it's rules that were written back in the early 90s that are governing that. And I don't know about you, but I've changed a lot in how I use technology since the early 90s.
I was going to say, I'm like the guardrail. Everything keeps moving ahead of me, and I'm still at the guardrail. But thank goodness I have children who can show me how to do everything. But it's a rapidly changing, and it is very hard to keep up. But certainly President Trump wants to put America first. We see it across the board, whether it's tariffs, closing our border. His agenda is about putting America first and what we can do to make America competitive and certainly continue to be the leaders of the free world.
Yeah, I think it's so funny because I had a friend of mine use this term many years ago called being a digital immigrant. Like, I'm a digital immigrant because I didn't start out my work life with a computer on my desk, but I've had to figure out how to do it. So it's crazy. But anyway, well, listen, Casey, it's always great to talk to you. I hope that enough Democrats in the Senate will come to their senses to at least allow the vote. In the old days, you would vote for cloture even if you might not be voting for the final bill because you allowed the debate to happen. And we need to get back to that.
I 100% agree with you, and thank you so much for having me today. I'll be back anytime you need me.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Ron Hart is here with me today, and it's so good to talk to you, Ron, because things are crazy out there right now. I got 3 topics I want to talk with you today about. I want to get your thoughts on the shutdown first.
I would say, oh, snap. I guess. I don't know. I mean, once you get in people's food, actually, I haven't missed the government personally, but you and I kind of live in a different world. We pay taxes and don't really use government services. So, my view of government services has always been unique, and I think people need to think about this. All the things you need, you get from the local government: police, fire, roads, schools, trash pickup. Fundamental things we all need are from your local, even food banks are, local. The federal government provides us what? Military, which is what all they really should be doing, right? The military, which we need to have military, et cetera. The rest, I don't even know if we even need what the rest of the federal government does. Local governments balance their budget. Basically, every year they have to by nature. The federal government runs $1 trillion deficit, giving us nothing. So I think the federal government needs to be starved to the point to which we can justify the things that they do.
So here's the thing, too. This is very different than the Obama shutdown that we had, and even the last Trump shutdown, that Obama tried to hurt people with what he closed down immediately. Trump has moved tariff money to do WIC. So for the time being, at least till the end of the month, WIC is going to be fine. He's been moving money around to pay the soldiers. The federal, there is still tax money coming in every month. Okay, so the weird thing is the Democrats have actually given him the power that they didn't want him to have, because now he can control the money that's coming into the federal government and decide where it goes.
Right. And it's so commonsensical, right? Tariffs are paying for some of this stuff. I think he's got individuals willing to pay $130 million to the troops to keep them going. I saw a Facebook post regarding that. I mean, he's got friends who can fund this thing, and it's different than Obama. Obama, their shutdown was punitive. Their tone was, "Hey, we're the government. We're going to show you who's boss here. We're going to shut down open air parks. So these 3,000 acre parks, we're not going to allow you to walk in them. We're going to shut down the bathrooms, but for us, you can't go to the bathroom on your own." I mean, it was that tone and tenor that the government's theirs, not ours. And if you look deep, that's what they did.
Yes. So I think it's going to be interesting. And of course, I've been telling everybody all week they need to call Senator Ossoff and Senator Warnock, tell them to vote to open the government. That you need to. There's 6 states where Trump won, and there's Democrats up for re-election next year. You need to call those states, and I'll give everybody that list of states later on in the program, as I've done every day. So be ready for that. And get your friends that live in those states to call. Because if you call from Georgia to Arizona or Georgia to Pennsylvania or whatever, you're not going to, you know what I mean? You're not going to be able to change anything. So there's a lot of different things that are there. But the other part of this is just that Senator Ossoff even voted against paying federal workers while they're negotiating. And it's just, he's just not representing the American people, and he's not representing Georgia. He is caucus over constituents.
Yeah, and I who would have thought 10 years ago they would have 2 Democrat senators in Georgia? That was this confluence of weird things that happened that got them elected. And to remember, they're very hard to they're ensconced. They're hard to get out of there. I mean, a sitting U.S. senator basically has so much money flowing in, so much gravitas, so much power at their fingertips that even a bad one can stay in for a long, long time. You let Menendez up in New Jersey, you name them. There's been some really bad senators that are hard to beat because they got money, they got lobbyists, they got coffers, they got the media, they got the power of the government implicitly behind them. So both these guys will be really hard to beat. Who do you think the candidate will be to go after them?
Yeah, I don't know yet. But we'll see where that goes. I want to ask you, do you know anything about data centers? Have you followed that at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
Because we just tabled one here in Hall County that could potentially replace the property taxes for the county, which is about 25% of your bill. They're looking at one in Columbia County, too, that says they can do the same thing. I'm trying to get somebody in here that's kind of an objective overseer of the information around data centers to see, because the people that are against them think they'll use too much power, too much water, and they don't really employ that many people for the amount of space they take up. And then the people that are for them are for them for all the reasons that it brings more money in, it could reduce taxes, that kind of thing. Just your general thoughts on that.
And they tend to go to smaller towns like yours because there is excess power in those small towns, right? It's not like Chattanooga or Atlanta or growing towns like Austin, Texas. They don't go near there because the power supply is taxed. They go near cheap power areas. Same thing with cryptocurrency mining. It takes a lot of energy to run these computers, and they need cheap. So the negotiations shouldn't be necessarily with the county. It should be with the power company.
Yeah.
Right? So how much power are you going to take and at what price are you going to take it? Some of them cut deals where they run the power mostly at night when people don't need power, or not, agree not to run the power during hot days in summer and cold days in winter to overtax the power system. Not many are going to Texas because Texas has a grid that's kind of expansive and hard to do. So they go to towns like yours. In my hometown, Columbia, Tennessee, they're looking there because they got TVA power here in Tennessee, and it's a great thing. And again, it's they need cheap land, big land, and there's certain things they need to get it done. Memphis kind of did an AOC and Amazon. Memphis, like a bunch of idiots, they had Elon Musk come in there with a big artificial intelligence system, and they tried to fight it, shake him down, or whatever they did over there. It's just idiotic to do that. All things equal, it can't hurt. What's the downside? It's a clean energy. It doesn't smoke stack, or doesn't, it's not like a prison in your town where escapees could hurt you. It's a pretty clean industry, so I would have no problem with it, but just keep an eye on them.
And then finally, of course, there's all the hoopla about the White House renovations. Okay, so just a little background. Jackie Kennedy won an Emmy for doing a documentary about all the work that they did in the Kennedy administration on the White House. There's, starting with it being burned down in 1812 and having to be rebuilt, to Theodore Roosevelt adding the West Wing, Franklin Roosevelt adding the East Wing, William Howard Taft adding the Oval Office. There were renovations in 48 and 52. I mean, this is just what happens. The difference with this one is, and Obama did $375 million worth of renovations. The difference is this one's not being paid for by the taxpayers. It's being paid for with private money. I don't understand why everybody's upset.
Yeah, the
by everybody, I mean Democrats. Okay.
Yeah, the epitome of hypocrisy. There's a piece where CNN shows Obama knocking down something to build his basketball court, whatever. $375 million taxpayers. They were glowing. The CNN. Oh, here, look at this.
I played that earlier. Oh
God. What a beautiful clip to show the difference between what happens between, the frivolous nature of a personal basketball court versus a ballroom where you have state dinners and everything heads of state. You're trying, you're ending wars, all over the world and stuff. You're doing it in a tent. That doesn't look good. So yeah, I don't have a problem with it, obviously, as long as there's no quid pro quo with these donors that come in there and give money. I doubt they're going to be the usual suspects like the government and stuff. So, the hypocrisy among the Democrats is just so large, and it doesn't. Even with the last election and all the media going under, they don't seem to get the message. It's just, to me, baffling.
Ron Hart, what you working on this week?
The No Kings rally, so the old white crowd there, the No Kings rally. In their defense, most of them were around when we had a king 240 years ago, so they should hear them out.
Absolutely. Ron Hart, thanks for being with me today.
Take care.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.